Okay, I'm here with Chris Sullivan and Gary Marshall of Wolters Kluwer, and today we're going to talk about some clinical effectiveness, what they're bringing to the show today. Chris, why don't you talk to us a little bit about Wolters Kluwer's clinical effectiveness and how the products you provide affect retail pharmacies?
Sure. So clinical effectiveness sits within the overall healthcare division of Wolters Kluwer, and then within clinical effectiveness, I'm GM for our commercial markets in the U.S. But in terms of who we are and what we do, I think from a product standpoint, we provide really a mix of expert content and software that is designed to enable the pharmacy team to make better decisions, and we help them do that more quickly and effectively. So that's really the bottom line. Versus from a customer standpoint, while pharmacy is absolutely our core, we're also growing in other places, in commercial payer, in digital health tech, and life science. So we serve a pretty wide expanse of different markets, and it's a really exciting time for the commercial business. But more to your question, I think what's interesting to us when we look traditionally and historically, our product set was pretty squarely focused on drug dispensing operations, right? Is the medication safe for the patient, or are there drug interactions or allergies? And that's really been our Metaspan and Lexicomp brands. Versus now, as the pharmacy expands, we are expanding alongside. And I think there are a couple of things that we see. I think there's definitely a continued trend in the direction of clinical services. Right, so I think it started with test and treat during the pandemic, and now it's shifting further into more advanced primary care, ongoing chronic care, and so it's raising up the need for clinical decision support. Right, help me make the right treatment decision and do that in the retail setting. That's really the crux of our UpToDate brand. So that's the first thing I'd mention. The second thing I'd mention is I think just an increasing importance around patient engagement. And I think some of that is educating patients on their disease and their medications, but at the end of the day, it's really how can we help pharmacy drive adherence? And that's a big part of our Emmy brand and what we do there. And then the final thing that I'll mention, and recently we launched a new product by the name of Digital Health Architect, was in response in large part to some of the feedback that we had heard from retail pharmacy during the pandemic, which was basically help us build our own digital experience, our own digital front door, help us customize it, fit it into our overarching consumer strategy, and that's effectively what Digital Health Architect does. So it's a platform that allows library access to all of our different content sets, right? So the pharmacy can pull content from Emmy, from UpToDate, from Metaspan, and serve that up in a tailored way to their patient base. So really content as a service in the retail setting, and that's really, really exciting.
So what you're saying is Wolters Kluwer really does ensure innovation on an ongoing basis and provides to stay ahead of the industry trends.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, so a couple things that I would note on the innovation front, and it's worth saying Wolters Kluwer is a company, we've been in business almost 200 years. Not a lot of companies can say that. That's a long time.
It's a very long time.
Ton of adaptation. Right, so I think innovation is 100% core to what we do. But if I peel that back a layer, I think there's a couple things that sort of set us apart on the innovation front. I think one is just our expertise, our expertise and how we pair that expertise in market. Right, so we have, and I like to joke that our software always gets all the attention, but at the end of the day, it's the underlying content and editorial process that really distinguishes us in market. And Gary and I like to say we have an army of people feeding that content: physicians, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, right? Keeping the content up to date, making sure there's continuity and it translates into various.
Content is king.
It is. It is. And so I feel like that's one piece of it. But then in terms of how do we pair that in market, a lot of that just boils down to how we're organized as a business. And so when I look at our commercial business, we align by customer segment, and that's really how we go deep from an innovation standpoint. So Gary heads up our pharmacy team, is separate from our digital health tech team, is separate from our payer team. So deep verticalization within market.
Awesome. Well, Gary, let me ask you, what are some of the pressures that the industry faces that Wolters Kluwer aims to address through its commitment to this innovation?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? I kind of like to think of it in kind of like a P&L statement. The first I would probably go to the margin pressure. Pharmacies are under constant margin pressure, especially as it relates to the dispensing and filling of medications. And that's something that's really top of mind for us, is how can we help on that operating side. But I think think at the same respect too, prescription growth has been pretty flat over the last few years. I mean, if you kind of take out the wave of COVID and you level it out, it's not growing a whole lot. So I think they're continuing to look for new revenue streams, and there's new opportunities for pharmacists to play a different role. So
it's interesting.
I think on the financial side there, I think you also are seeing a lot more competition than you have before. It could be competition through vertical integration, that the power forces are shifting a little, or it could be competition in a totally new logo. Could be a digital-only competitor or something along those lines.
Okay.
And then layered on top of all of this is we're also seeing the staffing challenges that come, beyond healthcare, but also within pharmacy.
Yeah, 'cause I was going to ask what examples you might have that you can share with pharmacy leaders about how digital can partner with pharmacists to alleviate these pressures.
Yeah, so this is one of the things my team focuses on, and maybe we'll take that example. Chris mentioned digital health architect. Okay, so this is kind of our content as a service platform.
Okay.
So I'll take one of the simplest things I think we can all relate to, but when you go to fill a medication, and you get a bag of medication, typically you'll have paper stapled to it. Yeah. That's your medication leaflet.
Yeah.
There's a cost into producing that. There's a value into having it, but there's a cost into producing it. It's the paper, it's the printer, it's the ink that it's associated with it. We have the ability to digitize that, and there's a couple reasons. One, on the operating side, you can save significant money when you're dispensing millions and millions of prescriptions, and you can move from paper over to digital. You're also providing better safety and a better solution, because if I, as a patient, were to have a side effect 2 weeks after I fill the script, there's a good chance that paper would actually be in the trash for those patients.
Right. Yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
Okay, so that's an example of how we try to address specifically like operating expenses, but also a better experience. But our content as a service concept also builds upon itself.
Yeah.
So if we can use that as an entry point to start to educate patients on the medication, we can then make the link. We've got the mapping to tie the NDC, the medication, over to the condition. So if I filled metformin, I can start to teach myself, Gary, more about type 2 diabetes. Do you want to learn more about your condition?
Yeah.
Why is diet important?
Right.
And then the next module might be test and treat. Hey, did you know at your local pharmacy you can get your A1C test done?
Right.
Do you want to understand what an A1C test is?
Right.
These are all modules that we have that can fit together and help serve the pharmacist. It complements the conversations they're having. It creates new revenue streams. It helps with operating expenses. Those are the types of things we're really focused on.
Okay. And this all translates down to the consumer, who is getting the ultimate service here. And how does this all relate directly to the consumer? I mean, are we talking about an app that we have for the consumer? Things like that?
The digital experience, it depends. The technology might be a QR code that's on a medication bottle, and then you use it to pull it up on your phone or an iPad.
I see. Okay.
It could be more of a text message. It really is catered towards the communication style of the pharmacy and the patient.
I see.
But to your earlier point, we're not going to do any of this if it doesn't impact outcomes positively. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do. Adherence is definitely one of the big levers we pull, but it's all about better outcomes.
Sounds like it. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. I mean, with the digital innovations today, the streamlining of everything is just this vertical streamlining, reduces costs on both sides of it for the consumer and for the retail pharmacy, and it's fantastic. Plus, you have an archaeological sort of digital trail for everything. So that little piece of paper, if it goes missing, well, who cares? I mean, we're not using paper. So,
another thing I'll mention too is the updates. The fact that we're constantly learning more and more within healthcare. Digital allows you to push immediate updates, so you're getting the most up-to-date information. Paper, that's not going to be the case. You're going to have the copy you picked up at the time of the prescription fill.
It just makes me wonder, actually, how we ever actually did it with paper. From hearing you guys talk about it, I mean, it's really amazing, right?
Yeah, it's exciting.
So it's fantastic. Chris and Gary, thanks so much. Is there anything else you might want to add to the program? Sounds fabulous. Sounds really innovative and fantastic.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.